A special treat for you here today. I'm doing a live coaching, and basically everybody here has joined my private mentoring group. We do this worldwide through Zoom, but a few times a year we actually do a live meetup together. So we're up here at the mansion, and everybody's here, and we're actually doing a cool little event together. So I thought that I would broadcast. I mean, this event is probably about 40 to 50 hours, but I thought that I would broadcast maybe like half an hour of it just for fun, so to kind of share it around. Are you guys excited for this next segment?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. Okay, I hope that you guys are enjoying being up here. We're going to go very, very deep in this segment. I'm going to talk for maybe 20, 30 minutes, and then what we're going to do is go into an exercise, okay? So what I want to talk to you about, and this is something that I've thought a lot about, is I guess you could say it's the sort of thing that you start thinking about when you hit your 40s. Does that make sense? Like, when you hit a certain age in life, you have to really reflect on certain things that you're doing. And so a lot of the personal growth stuff that I teach at this point it's getting a little bit more abstract, because I want to share lessons that have taken me decades to figure out. So the lesson that we're going to go into right now is not just finding your purpose, because we've talked in detail about what it means to find your purpose today. We've really gone in detail about that. But what I want to talk about right now is finding the right purpose. And here's why I say this, okay? I'm going to say something that's going to suck the energy out of the room a little bit here. And that's okay to do that, right? It's okay to suck the energy out of the room a little bit, not just to be like a love fest. But one of the most disgusting and sad things I've ever done in my life, but also eye-opening things that I've ever done, and I recommend that you do this, but in the right way, not the wrong way, is I recommend that at some point in your life, you go and hear the speeches that were made by the most horrifying and disgusting leaders in the world. And I recommend that you go and do that, because what you're going to take from it is how much they believed that they were in the right. And that is really, really terrifying. Like, that's the main takeaway that you'll get from it when you look at this stuff. Like, you'll see these disgusting leaders that like did these horrific, worldwide atrocities, and you hear them talking, and they'll say things like, we are on the side of God, and we are helping the world, and we're all adding value and positivity, and you hear it, and what will really strike you is that they are 1,000% convinced that they are right. And the people in the crowd are cheering for them, no different than maybe being in this room and we're like, yeah, we're gonna improve and all this kind of stuff. And what it makes you realize is how easily we can go down the wrong path and not question it. So what I wanna talk about here is making sure that as you build your dreams in life, you're not getting to a point where what you build is like this weird monstrosity and you build the wrong thing. Because frankly, I'm gonna be honest with you, I think most people that I've seen really get after it wind up making a lot of really, really horrible mistakes. And I wanna talk to you a little bit about where that comes from, okay? What I believe happens in human beings is that we have this thing called an RAS flip. Has anybody here ever heard me talk about that before, an RAS flip? Yeah. So RAS is reticular activation system. And what RAS is this kind of selective focus mechanism that we have, which deletes things, distorts things, and reframes things, okay? So it does, what's the first one? Delete. What's the second one? Distort. And what's the third one? Reframe. Okay, so basically what you have is you have the full and entire picture, and then what winds up happening is that if this is everything, when you're happy in a situation, maybe you just focus on these parts. But later, when you're mad about that situation, maybe you focus on different parts, right? And that's why you see these horrifying leaders or these, these horrifying things that happen. The reason that's occurring is because there's the full picture, but the people doing it are only focusing on certain parts that are self-justified. So what winds up happening is that our brain, like our DNA in effect, is always looking for ways that we can acquire safety, ways that we can survive, ways that we can take the path of least resistance, and frankly, ways that we can reproduce, right? Like ways that like if we're in the groupthink and we're a part of the establishment, we feel like we're safer, but we feel like there's also a higher chance that we're gonna mate. This is evolutionary. So our brains are very, very prone to self-deceit and lying to us just for the simple fact that we think we're gonna survive and reproduce out of it. This is basic Richard Dawkins, selfish gene. We wind up doing things that are just very, very wrong and evil. And I have watched many of my closest friends do things that I think were absolutely disgusting, and people that I really care about. And when I see that, rather than me looking down on them or judging them, I put that mirror right back on myself, and I say to myself, what am I not seeing? So what I'm gonna encourage you to do is something that actually Jordan Peterson really encourages, which is to bring in the transcendent element into your life. Now, what does that mean? There's great videos about this from Jordan Peterson. He'll break down the Bible and many other great philosophies that he breaks down. But what he says is that on some level, we want to aim our lives at the highest good. Now, I'm going to explain to you, first of all, why that's valuable. But second of all, I'm going to explain to you what the highest good is, or examples of what it is, but also what the highest good is not, okay? So first of all, the reason why we want to aim at the highest good is because when we are only in it for ourselves, what happens is that it opens us up to a lot of self-deception. It anchors us in deep-rooted self-deception. And that's why you've seen all these horrible things happen in the world, is people are justifying, rationalizing, deleting, and reframing. Now, you might hear that and you might think to yourself, well, you know, is this just some like moralizing or something like that? Here's what I'd say to you. If you're on the wrong path, at some point in your life, you're probably going to figure it out. And at some point in your life, you're probably going to have major, major regrets about that path. So I don't want you to dedicate your life to digging down a certain tunnel and then realizing, like, if you're digging down a tunnel, you don't just get to flip around necessarily and move the tunnel. A lot of time you've got to walk all the way back up, abandoning all that work that you did for that tunnel, and then go down another tunnel. And I can promise you that is not a fun feeling at all. So that's what I'm kind of trying to help you to avoid here, is I want you to avoid having that weird wake-up moment where you're like, what have I done? I've wasted my life. Like, if you're going to go all in to really live the life of your dreams, like what we're talking about in this event, what I want you to do is to go down the right tunnel. So what Jordan Peterson talks about as far as being aware of the highest good and acting through that, what that means is that you're not just thinking about yourself, but you're grounding your awareness in the whole. Not just in you, but in the whole. What are some basic level simple advantages to that, even selfish ones? A, most people that are very selfish, they get very, very reactive when things don't go their way. Because if it's all about you, then you're going to get very sensitive and reactive whenever things don't go your way. Look, I've seen so many stories like this. Like, anytime that I've lived purely for hedonism, or anytime I've lived purely for pleasure, whenever I'm not feeling pleasure in that moment, I get really, really angry. So the problem is when you live purely for pleasure, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down all the time, because you can never keep all your ducks in a row at the same time. So that's the first thing to realize, is that it gets you out of your head. Now, the next thing that it does is it also makes you very, very expansive. So what expansive means is that your energy will actually expand more, and your social awareness will actually expand more. When you're doing it for the highest good, what happens is that you're more aware of how other people are reacting to you, because your awareness isn't entrapped just in your ego. So that's another aspect of it as well. So what it does is it opens up energy pools that you didn't know that you have. Like, it marshals energy that you didn't know you have. It makes you aware of things that you wouldn't have been aware of, and it makes you less reactive and more focused and powerful, okay? So it makes it like when you're doing a punch, you're going to wind up with a harder punch. That's the basic level advantages. But the big one is that it gets you more present to the moment. If it's just all about you, you're going to be very trapped in your head. You're going to have a lot of ups and downs. When you're making it for the highest good, you're out of your head. Now, here's the next thing. Here is what the highest good is not. Number one, the highest good is not codependence. It is not lose-win. Got it? What is it not? Lose. Okay, what do you think it is? Win-win. Say that with me. Win-win. Because you are also a part of the highest good. One of the most important things you can do in the highest good is to make yourself strong, make yourself rich, make yourself popular, make yourself happy. That is a part of the highest good. And this is something that Ayn Rand talks about, where a lot of religious ideas or a lot of communist-based ideas will browbeat you and guilt trip you to think that you're not a part of the highest good as well, that you should ruin your life, that your happiness doesn't count, and that's a bunch of crap. So keep that in mind. Like, somebody who's very powerful and happy and strong can contribute millions of times more, maybe billions of times more than somebody who is just a loser in life. So don't be a loser in life. Be a complete winner in life, but just do so in a way that's win-win, okay? And we think that this is like this selfless thing. No, this is selfish. Your life will be better when you do this. And unfortunately, it may take a lot of horrible experiences that you have to realize it, but hey, at least if you're hearing it here, and you have that horrible experience, you can kind of come back to it later. Now, I'm going to describe to you 3 different transcendent philosophies, and Jordan Peterson talks about this as well. He does a great job of it, where basically what he says is that the commonality in a lot of transcendent philosophies is this idea that we think we get it. We think we don't need this. I got this. I don't need the transcendent. I got all this. I don't need all this crap. And so things like the Bible show examples of what happens when you lose that transcendent element, is basically what it is, okay? So I'm going to look at 3 different transcendent philosophies, and I'm going to show you how they can help you to move towards that highest good. So that way you can be more expansive, less reactive, have more energy, have more awareness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of your life, you're proud of what you did because life goes by quick. So here's what I'm going to focus on. First one that we're going to look at briefly is Christianity. I do not care if you're a Christian or not. I'm just going to look at it as a philosophy. Second of all, we're going to look at Taoism, which could also include things like Buddhism or Zen. And the next one that we'll look at is New Age trauma release. Like, you know, like the kind of like West Coast New Agey people. We're going to look at that. There's actually some really amazing stuff in there. Even though it's a little kind of over the top, it's really, really good, okay? You know, Julian likes to tease it. He'll wear like a cape and, you know, like his like Gucci outfit and the cape and all that. He does that to tease that philosophy. It's like a parody of it. But it's still really good stuff, so we're going to get into it. So what I think we need to do as far as the highest good is, first of all, have a devotion to the highest good. It's a commitment to the highest good. It's called devotion. The second one is that we have to have perception or wisdom. What is the highest good? How can we even see it clearly? And last of all, we have to have the ability for execution on the highest good. Okay? So again, it's devotion, perception, execution. It's those 3. Here's why. If you're not devoted to it, you're going to give up. If you can't see it clearly, what you think is the highest good is going to be wrong. You'll be like one of those psychotic murdering dictators, thinking that they're helping and they're not. And then the last one is you got to be able to actually execute on it, because you can know what's right. Again, it's really hard to execute on it. So I'm going to look at Christianity as a philosophy that helps you to be devoted to it. We're going to look at Taoism as a philosophy that helps you to become aware of it and see clearly without distortion and perception. And we'll look at New Agey kind of trauma release philosophy as something that helps you to execute on those, okay? So we're going to look at those 3 right now. Again, this is so you can be more powerful, be more aware, be more effective, be more energetic. It's just better, okay? Your life is just better when you do this. So Christianity. A lot of people associate Christianity with what? Be a goody-goody, don't have fun, life sucks. You know, just like moralizing, judging, shame. I've done interviews with people on the street about, you know, what are some of your beliefs? And a lot of people, like, without me ever even bringing up the Bible, will say things like, you know, I used to read the Bible. I felt ashamed of myself. It made me feel bad about myself. I freaking hate the church. You know, they'll say a lot of stuff like that. And that is because what I think would happen was that they're just using Christianity to browbeat people, and frankly, the people doing it, I don't even think understand it. If you were to read the Gospels, right, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, what is the main element of Christianity? What is the main thing that Jesus is bringing to the table? Simple. He's just a massive troll of the establishment. That's it. He is the Earth's greatest troll of the establishment in history. He trolled the establishment so hard, they killed him. Okay? He trolled them so hard, they threw him up on the cross, and he trolled them till the end. He wouldn't even stop trolling them. He just kept trolling. He's like, trolling them, you know? Just forgive them. Look, they don't even know what they're doing. Like, literally, he just trolled them and trolled them and trolled them, right? So that's the main thing that you get from Christianity, is just to troll the establishment. It is basically just, and so what he's really saying, and this is in 2021, this is like the biggest thing, and this is why it's so relevant. Why is it that communist countries immediately have to get rid of the Christians? Why? Like the first thing communist countries do is they got to get rid of the Christians. Because they understand that the main message in the Bible is you don't just get to do the ritual, like what Jesus says, like you've got the Pharisees, and the Pharisees are pretending to be holy. They're doing what's called virtue signaling. They're just sitting there, they're like, look, we observe the Sabbath. Look, we eat the right food. And Jesus will say things along the lines of like, you know, it's not what you put in your mouth that makes you vile. It's what comes out of your mouth that makes you vile. It's not about not working on a Sunday if somebody needs help in healing them. It's that you're really a good person in your heart. And that's the whole idea of like, you know, you'll come to me in heaven trying to get in. You'll say, Lord, I did all the things I was supposed to. And I'll say, I never knew you. And that's the whole Sermon on the Mount is basically just him saying you have to actually be a good person. And then what he does is he really ups the ante. He says if you're going to be a rotten person but pretend to be a good person, you're going to burn in hell. So what he does is he gets it to where if someone goes in a communist uprising, what will happen is they're like, look, we're going to go, because what's the most common thing in communist uprising? Purging, right? They kill, the most amount of people killed is usually communist uprising. They just kill everybody who doesn't conform. That's the big thing. Because in Christianity, there's an out, right? What's the out in Christianity? It's called repenting, right? Can you repent in communism? No, there's no repenting. You're just canceled forever, right? You get digitally canceled, or in real life, they just kill you in real life. So the idea of Christianity, why they need to get rid of it, is if you're like, hey, go purge everyone, yeah, for the collective, yeah. A Christian's like, I'm not going to hell. I'm not doing that. No, I'm not going to do that, right? So they got to get rid of the Christians. So the basic idea in Christianity, and you don't have to be a Christian to understand it, is what does it mean to actually be a good person, not to pretend to be a good person. The major idea there, what they'll say is like, go do good things, but don't talk about it. What do you notice when you go do something good and you talk about it versus when you do something good and you don't talk about it? Here's what you're going to see. When you do something good and you don't talk about it, you get this, it's like this download of present energy. Try just going and talking to a homeless person, not buying them off with $1. Give them an hour of your time. Listen to them, talk to them, treat them like a human being, and really connect with them. And you're gonna get, it's weird, you'll get high off of it. And not a drug high, a real high. You will feel high out of your mind when you do it because you're helping someone, but the key is, don't go run online and say that you did it. I don't even like talking about this here because next time that I might do something like that, it's gonna mess up my buzz, right? So you wanna go do things privately that are good behind the scenes that nobody knows about. That's what it means to be a good person. What happens when you post about it and you tell everybody about it? Look, there's a place for that. Being a role model, encouraging others, there is a place for it. Don't get me wrong. There's a place and time for almost anything. But what happens, you get a dopamine spike. You don't get that beautiful present high, you get a dopamine spike, and you clasp to it, and you need it, and it's like temporary, and it's frenetic, and then it goes away, right? So that's the basic, what was the quote? It was like, don't let the left hand know what the right is doing, or something like that, right? So that's the whole idea of it, right? And the basic idea, if you look at Christianity, is it's a devotion to the highest good. That's really what it is, right? Like, so when Jesus will say, keep God on your mind all the time, the way that I read that is keep the highest good on your mind all the time. The good, that beautiful, expansive, high vibration, creative, giving, sharing, Genesis energy. What is the word Genesis? It's that origin point of creation. Genesis, right? So a really good person, you can tell that they embrace a philosophy of life, not a philosophy of death, because a philosophy of death is like a black hole. It takes and it takes and it takes. Somebody who is run by the energy of life, it's like the opposite of a black hole. It gives and it gives and it gives. But that is not codependence. Understand the difference. Codependence is where somebody just, as a kid, and maybe had bad parenting, got traumatized, and then seeks out narcissists and then just feeds them. You can read books like Ross Rosenberg, The Human Magnet Syndrome. That's not spiritual growth. That is light-level mental illness that needs to be fixed with healing work. They are different, okay? So the highest good is a win-win where you can be your strongest and you can help others in that process, so everybody wins. Got it? Make sense? Okay. Now, that's the devotion aspect, okay? So in other words, with our reticular activation system and our biology, we tend to see what the establishment's doing, and here's the major key. Unless you feel strong, look at me in the eye, unless you feel strong, it is very, very difficult to really see the highest good and not to look to the establishment to tell us what is the highest good. Why is that? Somebody who feels weak and vulnerable, biologically, their greatest fear is getting kicked out of the tribe. So as a result of that, what they will do is they'll say, what am I allowed to think? What am I allowed to think? What would be the thing to say that I think is good so that I don't get kicked out of the tribe? Now, in communist uprisings, it's like, oh, anybody who's not towing the party lines getting purged and killed. So then the human brain comes in and says, I'm at risk, has a reticular activation system flip and says, oh, okay, I'll believe what the establishment tells me to believe. And they're like, look, I did the good thing, but never actually evaluating it through their own conscience. And by the way, notice that that's a controversial thing to say. How scary is that? How terrifying is that? That we live in a world that by me saying, don't just blindly listen to the establishment, but put this through your conscience, that would be controversial or even subversive for me to just ask you to have a conscience. What does that tell you about where we're at socially today? Okay? So that's the first thing to understand, is that really there's two ways that I can think of where you can actually see the truth. One of them is to be very, very confident and secure in yourself. We call that being alpha or being confident. If you feel like you're not in a threatening situation, you can look at a situation and say, this is what's going on. This is the biggest thing I train my sons on. Like my children, if you lie to them, they'll look at you and they're like, you're lying. 2 seconds, they're like, you're lying. You're like, you should think this. They're like, nope. Like Dylan, he will only believe what he thinks is true because he is confident. He only believes what he thinks is true. He's not going to believe what some establishment tells him. I've taught him that since he's 2 years old. 2 years old. I'm like, see this through your own conscience, see this through your own eyes, and follow your heart. I tell him that since he's a child, and he still is a child. So he's been conditioned on that, right? So he's going to see things clearly. So part of it is confidence. The other thing, frankly, is in religion, in Christianity, by giving people the confidence that if they do the right thing, even if they die for it, they'll go to heaven. That also allows Christians to actually do something better because they're not just going to be brainwashed. Again, that's why communists, like in communist uprisings, you got to get rid of the Christians. They're like, I'm not going to do that. Kill me and I'll go to heaven. I don't care. I'm not doing that, right? But to the people who don't think like that, they go in that other mode where they're like, I'm doing the good thing. I'm doing the good thing. How much in 2020 did we see that? Everybody knows what's going on, but they won't admit it because they're like, I'm just doing the good thing. I'm doing the good thing. They say things that they know aren't true. They believe things that they know make no sense, but they do it because they're told to believe it. And they don't have the confidence that they'll be safe, so their brain just goes in that frame, and that's it, okay? Like, you know how when you go out in Vegas and say whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas because everyone's like hooking up? So maybe someone who wouldn't normally hook up, when they wouldn't normally just like hook up casually, they go to Vegas, they'll do it. It's the same thing there, but like in mass scale conditioning in 2020. It's just like, well, that's what everyone's doing. And then also you'll even see it where people who feel low dopamine can now get a dopamine spike by browbeating other people to do what they're supposed to do that they even know is wrong. And you'll hear people doing it because they'll yell it out of cars, or like you'll hear the shrieking sound of like, meh, 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 like that. And you'll hear it because you can tell that someone who's never had that dopamine in their mind of feeling confident can finally do this thing where they can feel confident. So now you can set it up to where people feel confident based on things that they know aren't even true, and then because certain other people that are strong won't follow that, they can go around and shame them. And that's where things like Christianity come in. So that's the idea of devotion to the highest good. That's where transcendent philosophy comes in. Now, what's happened, if you think about it, is that by dumbing down society to a point where we're very egocentric, we don't care as much about the highest good. Adam Curtis, he calls this the century of the self. Who here's ever seen The Century of the Self by Adam Curtis? That's an amazing documentary. So this is the idea that I think it was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. Maybe the guy's name was Bernays or something. Edward Bernays, right? So he basically helped governments and big corporations to do propaganda. So they would push things like cigarettes by calling it a freedom torch, things like that, right? It's a freedom torch. So he would get women to want to smoke, to be rebellious by smoking a freedom torch, killing themselves, but they think they're trendy while they're doing it. So people like that came in, and what they did was, if you have it to where someone's very, very confident and someone's just focused on the highest good, they don't need 1,000 pairs of shoes. They don't need all this stuff for their ego. They don't need, to post on social media. They're confident in themselves. And it's not to say that you can't have those things. It could be fun. I'm a social media influencer, so I like to have different clothes to switch up the stimulus. But you see the idea, right? If you're focused more on your community and on the highest good, and what winds up happening is you don't need 1,000,000 pairs of shoes. But when it's all about you, what does society look like? It's a bunch of people walking around on their phone like this, obsess themselves. You say hi to people, they think it's weird. Why did you say hi to me? It's just about me. You have no value to me. They don't care that like you're a part of a community or things like that. How many of you don't even know your neighbors at this point? Put your hands up if like you don't even know or like your neighbors. Okay, well, look at that. Look how crazy that is, right? I was initially thinking that you all like your neighbors. I'm like, that's pretty good, but yeah, so, okay, put your hand up if like you don't hang out with your neighbors. Put your hand up if you don't hang out with your neighbors. So look at that, okay? Now look, that's up to you, that's fine, but I promise you, like, back in the day, like, you went over to share the egg or whatever else, you cared, right? But we live in the century of the self. It's all about consumer culture and get people obsessed with themselves. Well, now all of a sudden, in things like 2020, when all this dumb stuff comes around that everybody knows is BS, it's like, well, got to look out for myself. That's it, right? So that's why, you got to get rid of, I don't care if you're a Christian or not, but just as a general philosophy that the West was built on, you got to get rid of that because you can't pull the stuff that you're pulling now when someone's like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I'm not doing that. I don't believe you. Kill me? Cool. I'll be with God. F off. I'll be with God. Don't care. Not doing it. That's not the right thing to do. But people aren't going to do that in this day and age. You see that? So what happened was, we think of the values of people like the Vikings, right? Like, not to start taking on that ideology, but if you're a Viking, what do you believe? You believe that your whole destiny was preordained and that you go into battle and that you were basically not going to make it into Valhalla unless you fought bravely and had a hero's death. So imagine the Vikings going and raiding different, again, this is horrific behavior, but imagine how that conditioning affects them. When they go to do a raid, they literally think like, this life is a brief dream, I want to go to Valhalla, and look at this. They literally believe that in Valhalla, what are they going to do? They're going to keep fighting. So they already believe they're doing the most awesome thing that they could be doing now, and when they die, they're going to fight every day, and then at the end of the day, they're going to all dine together in Valhalla. So they're not even fighting just as a means to an end, like going to work for the paycheck to get the weekend off. They're fighting because they think it's awesome. So now they're in there, they're fighting, and they have no fear at all. They think that they're going to go to Valhalla, and they're just brutal, you know? That's the type of social conditioning. That's the exact opposite kind of social conditioning that you want to have in 2020, right? That's the exact opposite. You want people to believe there's no afterlife, no God, there's no point, we're a cosmic accident, it's all about you, so just look out for yourself, follow the establishment, and then just like sustain your life as long as you can until you go into the void of emptiness. And as long as you have people believing that, you got a perfect recipe for 2020, okay? So that's the main idea there. So that's one philosophy, just seeing that idea, basic level idea. Let's go now into the next one. The next one that we're going to go into, and I'm not telling you how to live, I'm just giving you a little exposition here. The next one that we'll go into is Taoism or Eastern philosophy, like Buddhism or Zen. Now, this is very, very complicated. Just like how Christianity has many interpretations, Eastern philosophy probably has even more, although I'm not even sure, but it has a lot. So Taoism is the idea that there's this like energy of the universe and we can tap into it. Buddhist philosophy talks about things like reincarnation, and Zen philosophy is very like experiencing the world like as part of the world and very raw and without a filter. What this is meant to do is that the emphasis of Zen and Buddhism and Taoism is getting out of autopilot thought, getting out of what they call the monkey mind. So in meditation, what we learn is that when we just pause and we sit there and we kind of just lay back and we get present, we're like, wait a minute, I'm still thinking. Well, if I'm trying to not think, but my mind is making me think, what does that mean? Wait a minute, I'm not my mind. Wait a minute, I am the witnessing consciousness behind my thoughts. Wait a minute, maybe my brain has certain attachments and is looping on those attachments, whether or not it's emotional addictions in my body, trying to regulate me and regulate my thoughts, whether or not it's ego attachment, whatever it is, right? In Taoism, they think about ego as a construct that chokes the natural flow of life and of life energy. So in Taoism, what they say is that there's this natural Tao, and it has its own motion, and the motion of the Tao is the return. So in many ways, it's a death motion, right? What that means is that when we allow ourselves to have an ego death, we can get out of attachment, and in a weird way, if I'm up here and I'm in my ego, then there's gonna be a constriction in the hose of the flow of energy. But if in my mind I allow an ego death and then I join all of you and I get present, I lose those attachments and I tap into the Tao and I move with the energy of the Tao. That's like the basic idea of it. What does that mean as far as being aware of the highest good? What it means is that you're not seeing the highest good through your ego and you're not seeing it through these weird filters and attachments. So in the same way that Christianity can allow us to have devotion to the highest good, things like getting out of the monkey mind and getting out of the autopilot mind, getting out of ego and attachment can allow us to see things with more clarity, okay? Now, the last one that we'll talk about is trauma release. And this is also a very, very popular thing here in Southern California, in Northern California, super duper trendy. And while I am as annoyed by New Age philosophy as anybody, look at my personality. Like, you know, I go to Venice, I don't fit in there at all. It's like a comedy seeing me in Venice. I'm very uptight. I resonate more with like Timothy S. Grover, relentless, winning, crushing it, dominating. I'm more that kind of person, but I can still see the value in some of that release technology, and I actually wound up doing one-on-one coaching with release work for many years, every day almost, and here's why I did it. Because what I realized over time is that we get addictions to different emotions, and we get addictions to trauma energy, and if we are addicted to a certain level of energy, it is very, very hard to execute on the things that we know that we should. Like, if you're addicted on negativity, and if you're addicted on being a 7 in status, and if you're stuck in your traumas, you will just go back into situations that will relive those traumas and relive that negativity because you're not healed. So I want you to look at the three, and so when you can heal that, by the way, that allows you to execute on making that amazing life. People that are unhealed, the better life they create, it's like giving a bazooka to a kid. They'll just mess things up even worse. And the downfall is like, it's almost like the movie Casino, where, you know, you have this big uprising and then boom, it comes down. Or the movie Goodfellas goes up and it goes down. Or Straight Outta Compton goes up, goes down. Or the movie Blow, it goes up, it goes down. You know these movies of like the rapid rise, the meteoric rise, and then the extreme fall down? That's where this comes from. When you're carrying that negative energy, you'll go down hard. That's why Julian created TM, was because he experienced that. He was unhealed. He created massive popularity for himself. He's doing 1,000-person seminars, people chanting his name, and he goofed it up. Why? Because he carried some bad energy. So he made a whole program about that. He became even suicidal after that. I had to coach him out of it. And so that's where he created TM after many years' experience with that. So look at those three things: devotion, awareness, and execution. Those three, okay? And I'm going to make a couple other main points. One person who I think is against transcendent philosophies is Ayn Rand, or even existentialist philosophies from France in the 50s. So Ayn Rand will say things like, look, don't allow some weird mystical, you know, woo-woo doll to tell you how to live your life, right? You've got to objectively decide how to live your life now, okay? So don't do that. And likewise in existentialist philosophies, people like Nietzsche will say God is dead. That doesn't mean that there's no God necessarily, but what it does mean is like, this isn't like the 1300s where you're just like, you couldn't even read the Bible, and some priest just like, this is the Bible, and you're like, oh, you know, it wasn't like dogmatic, right? So you can still believe in God, but it's not going to be dogmatic. So those are also ideas we're thinking about. But what I want to show you is that while things like, and I love Atlas Shrugged and I love Fountainhead, and these are books that excoriate transcendent philosophies, I want to show you that while they are very different on the surface, at a practical application, they're not as different as you might think. Let me show you why. The first thing is that any great philosophy, number one, increases awareness. And any great philosophy, number two, uses death to make you magnify the importance of how you're going to live your life. So people like Ayn Rand, what she said was, hey, we don't know what's going to happen after we die, so we've got to live a great life right now, okay? So she's like, we don't know, you know, objectively speaking, we don't know what's going to happen after we die, so we've got to live a good life right now. So again, she's using death as a way to increase awareness to live a great life now. In Christianity, it's like maybe you'll get into heaven or you'll get into hell, but you're going to die. So it's important that you live a moral life now. In Taoism, they'll say, oh, you know, you'll be reincarnated, or in Buddhism, you'll be reincarnated higher or lower, depending on kind of like the level that you got to. So you've got to let go of attachment right now and get out of your ego right now and be present right now. Or in things like trauma healing, what they'll say is, you know, you'll go into like the DMT ayahuasca universe, right? They're kind of into that. And you'll be floating around, and then you'll come back into a birth where you can heal more trauma. So you can stop that rebirth. Again, people who follow the kind of trauma healing stuff or the psychedelic stuff, they believe, and I don't do psychedelics, but what they generally believe is that we leave our body, we go in, kind of like, I mean, way oversimplifying this is like to the point of being condescending, I don't mean to, but the basic idea is like you'd go into like the DMT ether, and then you'd like see a reality that's more real than here, and then you'd kind of get reborn into a birth where you'd get to heal your traumas. Now, by the way, why does that like in a weird way look almost true, or maybe even is true? Because how many people that you know keep seeking out situations where they'll be re-traumatized? And the theory behind that is that we literally seek out friends, jobs, and romantic partners in situations that will re-trigger us on any unhealed trauma. That's the idea. And you'll see it to where someone who like, you might be dating some really beautiful person and their last 5 significant others all did the same nasty thing to them. And they'll keep dating only people that will do that nasty thing to them until they heal it. So that's where that kind of idea comes from, that like you're so addicted to that need to heal that you'll keep going back into situations that'll re-traumatize you until you do heal. So notice that any transcendent philosophy, what it does is it really puts the urgency of living a very aware life right in your face, and it uses death to create that urgency so that you can live life passionately and fully. What I think is that you can really use any of those ideas to live a great life. For example, a devotion to the highest good like in Christianity, getting out of your ego and attachment and monkey mind like in Taoism, getting rid of trauma like in New Age ideas, or even like in Ayn Rand, which is, she says you should just objectively go with what you see, live life in a beautiful way right now, in the best way that you can, because your happiness is important too. Now, of course, anybody who believes wholeheartedly in one of those ideas will find what I said insulting and offensive, because they're like, no, you have to pick. What's your tribe now? You better pick. You know, they have a lot of that. They're like, you can't just like get value from everything. They hate that because, again, they're part of that same group that, remember I said earlier that like I would interview people and they felt shamed by the church? People that do that, they're part of that camp. They're those people that actually alienate you away from looking at higher level teachings because they use it to judge you and to browbeat you. And I don't recommend that at all. But get that basic level idea of these two things. And here's what they are. Number one, what does it mean to live a great life right now? Not to just be part of the establishment, not to be that person who just like is like a good little person and does what they're told and thinks that that's good. No, that's often not good. Think about these horrific countries that did horrific things and genocides, and the people doing it thought they're doing good. Well, it's not. It's really not. And so ask yourself, if they got duped into that, how could you get duped into that? Okay, so ask yourself that. And at a lower level, because I don't think that anyone's doing anything like that anyway, because that's obviously not happening, but how might we be doing messed up things that are still leaving a legacy where you're on the wrong side of history? That is what I would say to you. Like, just general day-to-day life, where at the end of your life, when you're on your deathbed, you're like, you know what? I blew it, okay? Because in this course that we're doing here today, and in our mentoring that we do together, really there's a huge emphasis here on really building something amazing. And so I want you to think a lot about the foundation of what it is that you're building, because if you're building on the wrong foundation, it's like we're building this giant building together, but it's on quicksand or on mud, and that's not of any value at all. So what I want you to do now is get together in your groups, and I want you to talk a little bit about what death means to you, what kind of urgency death creates, realize that life's gonna go by really quick, and then ask yourself, with that added awareness, how do you want to live your life? And that means for your pleasure and enjoyment, just like Ayn Rand would say, for your pleasure and enjoyment, but also for the highest good, and also not just through your ego, not through attachments, not through your monkey mind, not through trauma. You could build a whole entire life just on trauma. So many people, their whole entire lives is just looping on trauma. So many people, their whole entire lives are just looping on ego. You see this? So what I want you to do, or some people their whole lives are rooted on just being selfish, stuck in their phone, their life is gone. How is that even a life? How is that even a death when it ends when they were almost dead in real life? Not saying they're not human, they are, but you know my point. So let's think about that here. So get together in your groups, and what I want you to do is I want you to think about what is an amazing life to you, and don't do some virtue signaling thing, and don't be like, I'm going to be the perfect person. No, you don't, and that's fine. What you want to do is create a win-win where you can win and everybody can win, so you're not trapped in that weird century of the self, like, me, in this little contraction where you look like a little demon troll weirdo, and that's what it makes you look like, by the way. It's not like you're getting yours. No, you look like a weirdo, and you are a weirdo. So get out of your head, realize that you're part of something more, get out of your head. How can you marshal more awareness? How can you marshal more power? How can you marshal a better life for yourself and the world? Do that now. Hop up. Oh, and by the way, one last point. The biggest thing that people that are asleep do, especially in the establishment, is they pick some trendy little cause, and they get behind that because other people think it's good, but they never look at the following things. One, the law of unintended consequences, right? You ever heard the expression, a fed bear is a dead bear? You ever heard that? A fed bear is a dead bear. I like to go hiking in Montana. Sometimes you see bears. I saw a bear recently. It blew by me on a trail. It was terrifying. It was a grizzly bear. If you feed a bear, it's like, we're the Feed the Bear group. We're going to feed the bears. We're good. Look, everyone, we're feeding the bears. What are you doing to the bear when you feed it? You're killing it. You're ruining its instincts, right? So sometimes when you're saying, no, like, I'm just going to go feed people or things like that, that's good, sort of, but it also has the added implication that it can actually hurt their instincts and hurt their motivation and hurt their evolutionary pressure. So yes, help people if they're just going to die, but you've also got to teach them too. I've known so many people that are just like, look, I'm feeding the poor person, and then they just leave. That's not doing anything. That's just relieving a bit of pain. Real help is when you sit there with them and talk to them and help them to see things a little bit more clearly, or maybe even follow up with them. That's real help, okay? The law of unintended consequences. Ask yourself, it's not just about, or also, by the way, a lot of really bad causes, they hide as camouflage under something good. Like, they will literally create laws these days called like the super happy law, but it's actually a law meant to make people sad, but they'll call it the super happy law. They're like, do you vote for the super happy law? You're like, of course I vote for the super happy law. Who wouldn't, right? But all these people have never even checked. You know why? Because all they care about is looking like they voted for the super happy law. They never go under the surface and say, what are the roots of this organization? What's actually going to happen in this law? All they care about is looking trendy. So that's why that devotion to the highest good means no. You look past the law of unintended consequences. You look at things like camouflage, and you see what it is that you're really doing, and you see things through your own heart and conscience and the highest good. So hop up now and talk about what death means to you, knowing that you're going to die. I've had students that are dead now. You could be the next. I hope not, but it can happen to anybody, so don't think you're above it. Take that as urgency, and likewise, what it means to be aware of what is truly a great life so that you're not just like walking around, wasting your life, reactive, mad, and unpresent. I want you to be out of your head, present, purposeful, passionate, loving life. That doesn't mean you can't stare at your phone sometimes. I do too, but it can't be the defining part of your life. Okay, so hop up right now. Let's have some really powerful discussions. Let's get into this. Let's chat. Let's go deep. And let's make some progress here, okay? By the way, I just want to say thank you to everybody who came to check out the video. If you ever want to get in on mentoring, go to livesocialtraining.com. That is livesocialtraining.com. This is about a 40 to 50 hour event, all exercise based, but I thought that would be just sort of a timely rant that anybody in the world could benefit from. Okay, so I'm going to get in here and I'm going to do some of these exercises, but livesocialtraining.com if you'd like to join the mentoring group. We do it from all over the world, over Zoom every week. We've got coaches, celebrity guests, amazing. Livesocialtraining.com. Even meet up from time to time in real life. It's just sort of a little bonus to it, okay? But you can really do it from anywhere in the world. Peace. I'm gonna hop through here, boys.